Hello, guys, and welcome back to our Renew Students YouTube channel. This is the penultimate episode in the book of Mark. Penultimate meaning second to last. So we are coming up on the last two videos here, talking about what happens to Jesus in the book of Mark. Where we last left off, there had been a betrayal. Jesus had been betrayed, and he was facing a trial in the middle of the night, which was super sketchy and not usually done. But the problem was that nobody could find anything wrong. And for them to find something wrong, two people had to agree on something wrong that Jesus had done in order for him to face punishment after this trial. But nobody's stories matched up. They couldn't pin anything specific on him. And but they were still holding this trial because Pilate was in a predicament where the Jewish leaders wanted Jesus something done with him, and he didn't want to have an uprising on his hands, and so it was just all sorts of complicated. But the point being here that Jesus was still in trial and they couldn't find anything wrong with him, which brings us to the next part of our story.
Yeah, so this is the full chapter. Chapter 15 of the book of Mark. So a lot of things happen, but we want to touch through some of the points of how it all went on. So now Pilate, of course, still thought that Jesus didn't deserve death and had offered for another person to be set free because of the tradition of letting someone go during this time of the year. But what happened was that the people started just saying, crucify him and crucify Jesus. So now it's interesting because just a few days ago, there were people that were, almost like declaring him king as he was entering Jerusalem. And now the things had just turned, surprisingly. So with the pressure coming from the Pharisees and the Jewish people, Pilate saw no other thing to do other than to have them get crucified. And of course, he had asked for other punishments to be brought upon Jesus. But that even those punishments just wasn't enough, according to the Jewish people at this time. They wanted him dead. So he got sent to these Roman soldiers who even mocked him and called them the King of the Jews, which it is crazy to think about how much the person of Jesus, how people declared him with so many titles about being the Christ, the Savior, the King of the Jews. But in this case, it was now in mockery. And so from being beaten and mocked and even stripped from his clothes and all of that, they then made him take his own cross with the help of a bystander at that point, and they took him all the way up to this very public place and had him crucified. So this was a painful, a debilitating, excruciating punishment served for the people who were the worst of the worst of the time, so that then everyone would be able to, who would pass along, would be able to see this shame and punishment being brought upon them. And this, of course, is also really saddening for his disciples and for those who had followed Jesus and cared about Jesus, including his own mother and other women who were present at the time. So at that point, even though this punishment would used to go through on for even days, because it was actually like death by asphyxiation, as it was just troubled breathing on top of being crucified. Jesus actually died a lot quicker than that. Before he dies, he actually exclaimed something in Aramaic, which was Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which was, God, why have you forsaken me? something that is a prophetic word from a psalm all the way back before the time of Jesus, in which people didn't realize what he was talking about and confused him from declaring Elijah, this prophet, to come save him. And people were so confused and being like, okay, well, if Elijah's going to come save the king of the Jew, the Christ, then let him do that. But that wasn't what Jesus was asking for his salvation at that moment. He was there to save the people. He was there to die this gruesome death as a redemption of those who had already deserved this death at the time because of their disobedience of God. So after those words, he ends up dying. A shock to all those who thought that he was going to be that king of Israel, that was going to bring an army and take over, the country, the world, or whatever they thought that he was going to do. He actually dies. And so another person, Joseph of Arimathea, who respected and loved Jesus and was a follower of Jesus, actually went to Pilate and said, okay, he died, which was a shock to Pilate because he expected Jesus to die like days afterward, and asked so that he would be able to bury the body. So from the cross, he takes it and buries it in like a grave that he knew about, he owned, rather than some grave that maybe Jesus owned or someone else did. So because of this, only the people who were there present, which was actually this women who had been followers of Jesus and supported his ministry, were the only one who knew where he was buried. So in this very depressing, troubling time, they just take him to this burial place and put a rock on top in front of it, and only the women get to know where it is.
So this is a really interesting point because we have expected Jesus to die because he did tell us that he was going to die. That's not as much of a shock to us. But it also raises the question of, since Jesus died, he has been crucified and he's been buried now, is he just a regular person like everybody else? Who is this Jesus then? If he's come and he's claimed that he is the Son of God, that he is God, and he's died, what does that mean for us? What does that mean that our God has died and has been buried? And we're actually going to pause the story here because we'd like to leave you kind of with that question of, if Jesus actually died and he is dead, what does that mean for our faith? What does that mean for this God that we claim to believe in? And what do we even do with that? How does that affect the rest of our lives? Remembering that we still have one more episode of this series, and there's going to be a pretty astounding conclusion to this. But we'd like to just let you wrestle with that a little bit of, our God died. Where does that leave us? What does that mean for us? And is Jesus only human, or is he also God? And we'd like you to kind of wrestle with that because it's not an easy conclusion to come to. Especially when we talk often about God being all-powerful and God being able to do anything. How does then that mess with our minds a little bit, that our God can do anything, and yet currently where we're at in the story, he's dead? And so think about that and come back for our next episode.
You're not going to want to miss it because what happens? Yeah, so stay tuned. See you next time.
See ya.